to make sure that everybody comes in, and we'll get the meeting started as quickly as possible. And we want to honor the time to try to get answers to as many questions as possible. So if you can just kind of hang in there with us, appreciate you guys taking the time to be with us in our Kaneohe Legislative Town Hall meeting. Okay, I think we're gonna get started. We're over 100 participants now. A few more are still trickling in, but we're gonna get started. Again, my name is Herb Lee. I'm gonna be your facilitator tonight. And this is the Kaneohe Legislative Town Hall meeting. It'll go until about 8 p.m. tonight. We wanna honor that time. We have a lot to share. And we also have a lot of questions that have been submitted in advance by the public. And we're going to try to get to as many of those questions as possible. Throughout the evening, if you have additional questions that you are not able to submit in advance of this meeting, you can do so in the chat. And I got to tell you right now that we got a lot of questions. So we're probably not going to be able to get to all of them, to answer all of them. So, but we do promise that whatever was submitted either in the chat or in advance, that it will be circulated to all of our public elected officials, and that somebody will get back to you with an answer to your questions that's either again in the chat or was submitted previously. The way we're going to do this tonight is that we have our 4 elected officials, Senator Jarrett Keohokalole, Representative Lisa Kitagawa, Representative Scot Matayoshi, and Councilmember Esther Kiaʻāina. And I'm going to give them 5 minutes each. And I'm going to stick to that 5 minutes so that we make sure that we have as much time as possible for the question and answers later. And then we also have a very special guest with us, Mr. Ernest Lau, who is the manager and chief engineer of the Board of Water Supply. And he's going to get 15 minutes and to address the water issue that many of you have also expressed concern about. Many of you have submitted a lot of questions regarding what's been happening with the Red Hill situation. So he's going to get 15 minutes to present. And then we're going to have 15 minutes right after that to take questions that are specifically have been submitted on issues regarding the water situation and how it may or may not affect, the Windward side, et cetera, et cetera. And then we'll get to the open Q&A process, which will be around hopefully about 7:25 or so. We'll have about a good 35 minutes to start going into the questions that were submitted previously. And then each of our public officials, depending on the issue, will be in a position to answer them. And I'm asking everybody, all of our public officials, to try to keep the answers as concise as possible. Sometimes the answers will, go between both state and government. So whoever feels comfortable in chiming in to, address the question, that is totally fine. But I do want to try to get to as many questions as possible in advance. We also, this is Kaneohe town meeting. And as much as possible, we're going to try. We did get some questions that had to do with off-island issues, and I'm not going to really address them in this Kaneohe town hall meeting, but it will be addressed offline. That really has nothing to do with Kaneohe at this time. So we didn't have a lot of those, but I just want to clarify and that we're going to try and get to as many of these questions as possible that specifically pertain to our Kaneohe Windward community. So with that, I'd like to start and ask Senator Jarrett Keohokalole, and you have your 5 minutes, sir. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for being on. There are over 100 people that are registered for the Zoom, and then I know we have people that are watching on Facebook. So thank you very much, and thank you, Herb, for agreeing once again to facilitate. This year is going to be a very interesting year at the legislature, but I think in Hawaii overall. Obviously, a lot of you are here for some information and perhaps some hope on the Red Hill issue. Ernie is here, and I'm really grateful that he is willing to come and take some Kaneohe specific questions to the issue. I'm very concerned about the Red Hill situation. We have been trying really hard to make sure that there's open communication between the public and the Navy, and even the Department of Health, who's actually in charge of regulating underground storage tanks and regulating drinking water and clean water in Hawaii. So as it relates to the way the Navy is trying to flush out their drinking water system at Pearl Harbor, the Department of Health regulates that process. They regulate what we agreed to today, which is basically the plan to try and clean out the Red Hill well, the Red Hill shaft that the Navy has used to pump water that was the main source of contamination. So the Department of Health is in charge of that, and then going forward, and the permits, the emergency orders. So those are all issues that we're going to be addressing, hopefully on the town hall tonight. And there are a number of bills that will be proceeding through the legislature, one of which my health committee in the Senate, along with the Environmental Protection Committee, passed out yesterday out of committee, which, if it passes into law, will decommission the tanks. It will prohibit the use of future tanks, underground storage tanks over 100,000 gallons, and prohibit the use of underground storage tanks within proximity of drinking water. We had one question, Ernie, that asked about the underground injection line and what that means. I'll let him explain it because he's much better at that. But that's essentially what the bill does. We also have some big ticket items that we need to address in state government this year. There's a surplus because of all the tourist activity that happened after we opened up in the summertime, and then during the holidays after the Delta surge ebbed. So there's a surplus of state funds. But there are a number of really big and expensive items that we need to determine how we're going to fix. One of them is the Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund, which was a big deal last year during the shutdown when 40,000 workers were laid off all at one time. There's still about a $600 million deficit to that trust fund that small businesses pay for unless the state comes in and takes some action. Broadband is also going to be a big issue. There are at least $100 million of federal funds that are about to be distributed to the state of Hawaii for broadband. So the main priorities this year on that are making sure that people at the end of the line in their homes are able to utilize that broadband connectivity on an equal basis. So education, devices, outreach, but then also connecting rural areas, especially on Oahu. As you go on up the coast, there are bad areas, and there are areas where people do not have access. On the neighbor islands, it's a really big problem. And then what they call middle mile, which is basically the undersea cables. There's not a lot of incentive for the big incumbent telecom providers to connect our islands with fiber. And broadband is the new air travel. I mean, it's an essential piece of our infrastructure moving into the future. I'm sure you folks all know that. So that's a big one. So happy to talk about that. And then finally, the other issue that as co-chair of the Hawaiian Caucus, I've been working a lot on is the proposal that was actually put forward by the House of Representatives, not the Senate, to dedicate $600 million to the Department of Hawaiian Homelands, which I'm really happy is an issue that will be discussed going forward. I think, you know, it potentially can go a long way to alleviating the obligations that the state of Hawaii agreed to when we entered the union. You know, it's in the Admission Act as a compact with the federal government that we would take over facilitation of the Hawaiian Homelands program. And there are still almost 30,000 people on that wait list that do not have homes. The Kaneohe town, the community of Kaneohe is the largest zip code in the state in terms of population of Native Hawaiians who are on the wait list. We have no homesteads in Kaneohe. So the people that live in Kaneohe that are waiting for homes on homesteads are impacted just like everybody else with the housing crisis. And I do think that if we can make sure that that money is spent appropriately in the types of programs that are going to net us housing really quickly, I think it will benefit everyone. So, you know, COVID, Red Hill, whatever else you'd like to talk about, anything on related to the health committee that I chair, I'm happy to discuss. And thank you for being on.
Thank you, Senator Keohokalole. And now we have the next 5 minutes going to Representative Lisa Kitagawa.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. Thank you so much to everyone for joining us. And thank you to Ernie from Board of Water Supply and Herb, who's our moderator tonight. So I just wanted to share a little bit about what I've been working on. And I'll first start off by introducing myself. I'm Lisa Kitagawa, for those who may not be in my district. I represent half of Kaneohe all the way out to half of Waiahole. And so just some things that are happening at the legislature as far as what I've been working on. The first is I have 10 bills that I've introduced this session. And that's because the House, because it's the second year of the biennium, has a limit on how many bills we can introduce if we are not chairing a committee. So we have 10. Most of those bills that I've introduced are based on community input and community members coming to me and saying, you know, this is a problem and this is something that we want to see addressed. And so we've worked with them to create those bills. So I just want to highlight a few that we have. The first one is a bill that I introduced a couple of years ago related to cesspools. And so we're bringing that back again this year. Hopefully with the surplus in funds that the state has, this may become a reality. Out in Kahaluu, which is one of the areas that I represent, is one of the largest concentration areas of cesspools, and the Department of Health has designated it as a priority area. So what this bill does is it looks to provide grants and subsidies to low and moderate income families to help them convert their cesspools because we know that it is so expensive to do so. So hopefully that bill will get some money and we'll be able to help people, not just in Kahaluu, but all across the state, convert cesspools so that we can protect our water pretty much. Other bills that I just want to highlight are related to tourism and some concerns with over-tourism. And so one of them is a state parks bill where it's asking the Department of Land Natural Resources to look at all the state parks across the island and to see whether or not those state parks can include a reservation system, which of course would not be for people who are residents, because as residents, you are freely able to go to any of our state parks. But this would really be for non-resident visitors, tourists, to come and see if we can create a reservation system if they're overcrowded, or to even see if we can create like a payment system like how they have at Hanauma Bay or Ha'ena out on Kauai. And so that's really to help generate money from our tourists and our non-residents, and to also better manage our state parks so that visitors, as well as our local community, get a better experience. And then the other tourism bill looks at better educating our visitors who are coming, explaining, you know, the importance of being respectful and just respecting our aina and, you know, respecting our cultural values here and just educating them on what Hawaii is, and also incorporating a component where they are able to donate to help maintain some of you know, our trails and our beaches and things that they come to enjoy. So I've asked my staff to put a link in, which she has, which links you to all of the bills that we are introducing. And then as well, I'll have her put in our contact information so you can feel free to contact me if you have any questions or concerns, and then we'll make sure we get that addressed for you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Representative Kitagawa. And now the next 5 minutes goes to Representative Scott Matayoshi.
Hi, aloha everyone. Thank you for being here, and a special thanks to you to Ernie for taking the time out of his day to, and not even day, night, after hours to be with us and to help share about Red Hill. I just wanted to talk about a couple of things, but first, on the issue of Red Hill, I think we're all in agreement that we've got to get rid of those tanks. I mean, I really feel like there's a gun to the head of Hawaii right now. I mean, it's threatening our very existence on this land. And I just want to assure everyone that we're going to do everything we can to take that gun away and to make sure that our water supply is protected. And I know Ernie is going to be expanding on it further, but there are a lot of bills going through, a lot of them that we're all supporting to try to shut these tanks down and to protect our water supply. Two things I wanted to talk about. One, I've got a bill going through this year. Anyone who lives in Kaneohe or all over the Windward side knows that helicopters are an issue. We keep getting told that it's a federal issue, federal preemption, we can't do anything. I kind of put my thinking cap on as an attorney too, and I came at it another direction. My bill would create a private right of action to allow citizens to sue the helicopter companies directly for noise nuisance claims. So we're taking the government out of it a bit. There is a little bit in there for to allow the government to fine helicopter companies for noise nuisance violations as well. But I wanted to put it in the hands of actual citizens who are being affected by this, especially by the noise, to be able to sue helicopter companies directly to get them to either fly higher or to avoid our neighborhoods. So that bill's coming through. I'm hoping that's a way to get around federal preemption, kind of in a similar way for the Texas that Texas is pulling right now with their abortion ban. I've also got another project I'm working on, and I submitted a bill to the legislature for some funding and for some other incentives for a developer to create a bunch of teacher housing. I'm hoping to put in about 300 units in this project and have it be a pilot program for the rest of the state for other plots of land. But, you know, as a former teacher myself, when I taught out in Nanakuli, I mean, it's tough to be a teacher, especially in your beginning years. And we can't directly affect teacher pay because of collective bargaining issues, and it's a constitutional issue. But I was trying to think of another way to give teachers that benefit to attract people to the teaching profession and to keep teachers in the teaching profession. And housing is such a large portion of many of our paychecks that I thought a teacher housing would be the way to go. So this project is aiming for a couple hundred units to start with. It's going to give priority to people or teachers in their first, we haven't decided yet, but first 7-8 years of teaching, so they can get their feet under them, get that teaching experience, and build up a nest egg so they can move out later and hopefully just put down roots in Hawaii. So yeah, that's an exciting issue going forward. I'm really hoping to push that forward this legislative session, both outside of the legislature and inside the building with the bill that I'm proposing. And with that, I can't wait to hear from Esther and Ernie.
Okay, thank you, Representative Scott Matayoshi. And our next 5 minutes is going to go to Councilmember Esther Kiaʻāina. Esther?
Thank you, Herb, and aloha to everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening. As many of you know, the City Council had its first full council meeting yesterday, and there's several tiers of issues that I know are of interest to the community. Foremost, of course, is affordable housing and homelessness. Chair Waters and I put $170 million into the budget last year. Our objective is to increase the number of affordable housing units, both on city properties as well as newly acquired properties. And yesterday, 2 resolutions passed dealing with both affordable housing and homelessness to keep the administration on track with regard to developing a plan to work in concert with us. The second issue of importance is the impact of short-term rentals into our residential communities, including the Windward side. Bill 41, CD1 passed yesterday. We all agree, whatever side you are on the issue, that enforcement is critically important and that the Department of Permitting and Planning has to step up their game. Second, the bill increases the number of days for short-term rental from 30 to 90. And last, we also passed the bill relating to tax equity. So in the chat room, my staffer has put the bill in the chat room, as well as my contact information if people want to provide any comments to pass second reading. We're going to have one more hearing, and that will be the final hearing. Red Hill, of course, is top of mind for all of us as well. Bill 48 passed, which yesterday, which provides the city with a role in the regulation of underground storage tanks. Last December, I passed a resolution that put the city council on record as asking for immediate defueling as well as the removal of the tanks. And this evening, Chair Waters and I sent a letter to the president because we believe that the Navy's mishandling of the issue is so muddled that people are not getting the message. It's not about whether they can have the tanks there to safeguard national security interests. Their mishandling of the whole Red Hill crisis is jeopardizing national security interests. And we believe if the Navy and the Biden administration is not careful, it's going to jeopardize overall military relations with the people of Hawaii. And lastly, of course, property taxes is top of mind for everybody. And so there are several bills that got referred yesterday. Bill 3, introduced by Chair Waters and myself, which is having the tax office explain how they came up with the valuation of the property. Bill 7 from Carol Fukunaga, which increases existing standard home exemptions based on inflation. And Bill 49, which taxes vacant residential property. And I look forward to a robust dialogue in the question and answer, and also look forward to my colleague, Mr. Lau, who has been the most forthright advocate for protecting the residents of Oahu in the whole Red Hill issue. So thank you so much for participating tonight.
Thank you, Councilmember Esther Kiaʻāina. So for those of you that just joined us, and we have, I'm showing on my screen now, 147 participants on this Kaneohe town meeting, which will go until 8 o'clock this evening. Again, my name is Herb Lee, and I'm helping to moderate our town hall meeting tonight. We have members of the public had submitted numerous questions in advance of the meeting, and we're going to try and get to many of those questions throughout the evening as much as we can. If you have additional questions, you can put it in the chat. If we don't get them, if we don't get answers to them all tonight, they will be followed up by our elected officials that are here tonight. Next on our agenda for the next 15 minutes is the manager and chief engineer of the Board of Water Supply, Mr. Ernest Lau. And so he's going to present now, followed by 15 minutes of questions that have been submitted. And I'll be posing the questions to Mr. Lau when his presentation is completed. So Mr. Lau, thank you for joining us again. And you have 15 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Herb. I know you're going to keep me on track here. So I just really quickly, mahalo, Senator, representatives, and council member for allowing this opportunity. Informing our community about this situation at Red Hill is really vital, and we look forward to every opportunity to do that. So to increase the knowledge of people on this important issue. Let me share my PowerPoint, and my apologies if I mess up. Let me see if I got this. Is it showing up, Herb?
No, not yet.
Not yet. Okay. Well,
Jacob?
hold on. Let's see. I messed up already. But let me, okay. I'll do a share.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Share
And,
screen.
okay, how is it now?
Here we go. Yep.
Okay.
Can
let
you,
me get-
yeah, that's perfect.
How's this?
Yep, good.
Okay.
Can you, yeah, that's perfect now. Okay.
Okay,
Now
great.
it's the full speed. It's the full speed. That's good.
Okay, well, hello, everybody. I'll be really quick. I know this is a lot of information, but talking about the impact of Red Hill contamination on our water, on the Board of Water Supply. This is kind of a simple picture of the hydrologic cycle, or where our water comes from for the island of Oahu, especially really is the evaporation that starts over the oceans, it creates clouds and it drops the rain or the ua on the Mauka watershed lands, especially that help to recharge the underground aquifer. And that's shown here in light blue. You have two types, the basal aquifer, which is the fresh water that's floating on salt water. But you have, especially on the Kaneohe side of the island, you have an area of what we call dike zones. As the volcano that created the islands was cooling, there was these cracks in the rock, and magma came up in these cracks and created these dense, thin sheets of very dense lava rock that cooled in these cracks, these vertical cracks, and they act like dams. So when you penetrate one of these dike dams or these compartments that has fresh water that has built up behind it, then you have a tunnel that flows pure drinking water without pumping, and it flows right into our water system. So Kaneohe is blessed with a lot of that water. Wells don't do too good on the Kaneohe side area because of the dike zones, but tunnel sources are really most substantial in Kaneohe. We also use deep wells to pump water from the aquifer that's floating on the salt water that permeates under the island. This is all in the pore spaces and cracks and crevices of the lava rock. There's no large cavern or cave of fresh water. It's really pumping out of the lava rock, which acts like a sponge to hold the fresh water. And fresh water is lighter than salt water, so it floats on top of the salt water. We're blessed around the island with what we call the caprock, which is shown here in yellow. And that caprock is marine sediments that have built up over time, erosion material that's come from the Mauka to the ocean, to the coast, and it's very low permeability. So it's helping to build up a large freshwater body behind it that is actually higher than sea level. So for every foot of freshwater above sea level, that blue line shown here, you can think there's 40 feet of fresh water below it. And now this is a picture of the island, and it shows in this case, not yellow, but blue, the caprock area around the island that encircles the island. And there was a question earlier brought up by the senator about the underground injection control line. And it kind of follows along this line here, maybe not precisely, but it tells you areas where you can inject dispose of waste safely without contaminating a drinking water aquifer that could get into a well and be pumped into the system. So you want to be Makai of this line in that blue area. And that's kind of where we think the Red Hill fuel tanks should be placed if they had to build storage on the island, not over our drinking water aquifer. And that's mostly the interior of the island here. This is a map from the Commission on Water Resources Management at the state of Hawaii. It shows the hydrologic units for groundwater, and also each of the areas are labeled like Waipahu, Waiava is the water system or hydrologic aquifer sector or system for that area. And the numbers below it, like 105 MGD, that stands for 105 million gallons of fresh water that can be pumped from this section of the aquifer per day without causing the aquifer to get salty or degrade in quality. And you can see that the island is developed sectioned off for management purposes by the Water Commission to show different areas. And the green area, Ko'olaupoco, is really where and Ko'olauloa is where the water sources for Kaneohe come from. So it doesn't tap the areas that for those of us that live on the leeward side or South Shore side rely on the water. And see the Red Hill facility stands right over the drinking water aquifer. All 20 tanks are right over the aquifer, and most of that 3.5 miles of pipeline is over the aquifer. And it's really between the border of the Mauna Loa aquifer system and the Waimalu aquifer system. This is a depiction, a graphic from Navy reports that shows the 20 tanks. They're standing vertically. Each are 250 feet tall, 100 feet across or in diameter, and can contain up to 12.5 million gallons of fuel. They were built between 1940 and 1943. and they're still in service, nearly 80 years old ago. So the thing that keeps the fuel from leaking out into the environment is a 1/4-inch steel liner that is installed backed by many feet of concrete, but it's really that 1/4-inch steel liner that was put in place 80 years ago that's keeping the fuel from leaking out into the environment and getting into the aquifer. You can see on the bottom left corner here is the depiction of the 2 rows of 10 tanks each, 20 tanks total. And the bottoms of those tanks are only about 100 feet above the aquifer itself, the underground aquifer that we use for drinking. This is looking down from above. You can see the circles, dash circles with numbers on them. They represent 2 rows of the 10 tanks each for the 20 tanks. And a dash line that between those tanks is actually representation of the lower tunnel that has all the pipelines that run to and from Pearl Harbor that connect each of these tanks. So fuel is pumped up from Pearl Harbor uphill to these tanks, and then gravity flowed back down to Pearl Harbor. And that 3.5 miles of pipeline is not a double wall. And these tanks are what we call single wall. So is the pipeline that carries the fuel to and from Pearl Harbor. And you can see in red here, it's labeled Red Hill Shaft at that black dot 2254-01, which is the state well number. That's the pump room that is also connected to the same lower tunnel connecting the fuel with the fuel lines to and from Pearl Harbor from the tanks. So it's really physically connected to that tunnel. You can see the circle in red here is infiltration gallery. This Red Hill Shaft is like our Halava shaft. It skims water off the top of the underground aquifer, not deep within the aquifer, but near the top. So when you expect fuel contamination to occur, it'll be mostly at the top because oil is lighter than water. And that somehow got into this underground tunnel that runs almost like under that lower pipeline tunnel carrying the fuel. And that tunnel is used to skim the top of the water table and pull it toward the pump room right by that black dot. So this is what we think, and the Navy thinks, it got contaminated and got pumped into the water system that they serve. This is looking like from 10,000 feet above and looking down toward Halava Valley. On the east side, you can see outlined with those black dots, the Red Hill Bulk Fuel Storage Facility underground in that ridge above kind of the Kaiser Hospital area, looking Mauka from the Mauna Loa Freeway. You can see that they have a water source, the Red Hill Shaft, which is currently heavily contaminated that they're trying to clean up, located about 1/2 mile downhill away from the tanks. But for us, so for the Board of Water Supply, we have 5 wells that are closest on either side of the Red Hill facility. To the south at the bottom of the page here is actually our Mauna Loa wells. And to the top in the middle is our BWS Halava Shaft, which is a 6 to 12 million gallon a day source. Also, we have our BWS Halava wells, our BWS Aiea wells, and Aiea Gulch wells. Circled in red are the BWS wells that are currently closed. And the reason we shut them down is because we cannot allow fuel contaminated water to get into our drinking system to serve the communities of Aiea, Halava, and Honolulu, where we have more than 400,000 people that are customers of homes and businesses and hospitals and other types of water users. So 3 wells are shut down. The Navy has shut down their Red Hill Shaft, which is heavily contaminated, but also another well called the Aiea Halava Shaft, which is not shown on this map, but on the same side of Halava Valley as the Board of Water Supply sources there. Now, the whole issue and the whole question from the very beginning, back in 2014, when I first learned about the leak from tank number 5, 27,000 gallons, is the underground aquifer that is in this area is the same aquifer that both the Navy and the Board of Water Supply tap. It's almost like we have 2 straws. One is a Navy straw representing their source, their well, and the other one is the Board of Water Supply straw, which is the Board of Water Supply wells. And we suck out of the same cup. The concern is fuel leaking out of the Red Hill facility, and we know that has happened in the past, including and more recently, can it migrate as we continue to pump from the same underground aquifer across Halawa Valley and get to our Board of Water Supply source, especially our Halawa shaft. So the field data that was collected in coordination with the USGS, the Navy, the Board of Water Supply, and Department of Land and Natural Resources seems to indicate that there is a flow gradient or flow direction across Halawa Valley. And that's been our concern since 2014. This is what they call a particle track computer model runs, and each line represents a computer model run that the Navy did, submitted as part of their groundwater modeling report under the administrative order and consent that was signed in 2015. That report in 2020 showed that, and they're doing this modeling work, and it's pending EPA and DOH review and approval. I want to make that real clear. But each of these particles, they're saying a particle of fuel, if it leaked out of those black dots which represents the fuel tanks at Red Hill, can it flow through the underground aquifer and get to our sources. And you can see here clearly lines going across Halawa Valley, also going to our, I think that Halawa Shaft 1 and 2 is actually our Halawa wells. The areas that are redacted here, I think they may represent the Red Hill shaft of the Navy and the Navy's Aya Halawa shaft. And you can see that what this particle track model runs show, and this is preliminary, but it shows that there's a potential fuel leaks, depending on the magnitude of the leak, could make it all the way as far as Kalawao Springs to the west at Pearl Harbor. And this is a reason why we're so concerned about this situation. What the Navy's customers of the Navy's water system, we cannot replicate that with the Board of Water Supply system. And the reason why is that the Board of Water Supply system is way bigger than the Navy system. Right now, Joint Base Pearl Harbor's water system serves maybe 90,000 plus people, residents that live in housing, on-base housing, workers and contractors and other businesses that are served by the Navy's water system. The Board of Water Supply system island-wide serves 1 million people each day with drinking water. And we, on average, pump or produce about 145 million gallons. In the Honolulu water system, that is can be about 50 million gallons a day in that Honolulu water system itself. This is a depiction of the pipelines in the Honolulu Metropolitan Water System, Metro Water System, and it's the pipelines that only serve the lowest elevations. We also serve valleys that are, you can see valleys here and ridges. They come from this water system shown here in blue. And we have, Honolulu has grown since it first developed as a city. And originally, Honolulu's water demand could be met by wells that are located in the city of Honolulu itself. Kalihi Pump Station, Beretania Pump Station, they're over 100 years old. Wilder wells near Punahou, Kamiki Pump Station. Those are examples of some of the wells in Honolulu itself. But as Honolulu grew to what it is today, we actually had to go out toward the Pearl Harbor area, go west, and develop wells like Halawa Shaft, developed around the 40s, and pump that water into Honolulu to meet the demands of Honolulu, all the way from the Halawa area, all the way out to Hawaii Kai, to Makapu'u. There, to the left of this graphic here, there are more wells that are not shown here: Punanani wells, Kalawao wells, Kaumila wells, Hikuwai'ao, and they actually also will send water into Honolulu. There is a connection from the Windward side around Makapu'u, but really there's not enough water actually to come around Makapu'u to help meet the demands of Honolulu. So most of it is met by water in Honolulu from Honolulu sources, but also water imported from Pearl Harbor. We do have the connection out near Kalama Valley from Makapu'u with a large transmission main. What we really don't bring much water. The Windward side, has grown over time, and the demands of the Windward water system really take up most of the supply needed for Windward Oahu. During emergencies, like if we have a major main break in Hawaii Kai, and Hawaii Kai is like absolutely running it dry, running out of water, we'll try to bring some water around to Makapu from the Windward side. But really, our priority there is we got to make sure we take care of the Windward Oahu's customers, their water needs, and whatever we can spare to bring over, we'll bring that over. So that's some of the challenges here. And the water really flows from the Windward side toward Kalama Valley, toward Makapu'u. Right now, we don't have any water from the Honolulu water system flowing backwards into Waimanalo and the rest of the Windward system, because the reservoirs set in Waimanalo are much higher than the reservoirs set at Kalama Valley. So that elevation difference makes it impossible for us to send water backwards to Windward side at this time. The
Mr.
Navy
Lau,
did-
we're getting close to the time. Just wanted to give you a heads up. Thank you.
Okay, so the Navy did a risk, thank you, Herb, and I talked too much. The Navy did their own risk assessment of the probability or possibility of leaks in the Red Hill fuel facility. And you can notice here in that first bullet, 27% probability of a sudden release between 1,000 and 30,000 gallons of fuel each year. And you can see as it goes to a longer period, larger releases, it's over a longer period of like 100 years, but the percentages are pretty substantial. And leaks that can occur every year at 5,800 gallons that are undetected. 72 releases, about 200,000 gallons, we think, based on the Navy's records, are released over the life of the facility. And a history here of some of the recent releases that are still being investigated by the Navy, and we're anxiously waiting to see that report. And really, our challenge here for the Honolulu metropolitan system and also the Aiea Halawa water system, we've lost about 20% of the supply for Metro Honolulu right now with the closing of Halawa Shaft, and about 50% of the supply for the with the closing of the Aiea and Halawa wells for the Aiea Halawa 277 system. So our challenge is especially during the summer, is how to make sure the demand for water or water use by our customers doesn't exceed our available supply. Because when that happens, you'll experience low pressure and maybe at times no water. So we're going to be watching this very carefully, and we're going to need the kokua of our customers to help us conserve and cut back on their water use, especially during the summer, and particularly in those two water systems. Water conservation tips at borderwatersupply.com. These are 7 common tips. And in summary, we've shut down the 3 wells. Continued storage of fuel above our drinking water aquifer endangers that resource to further contamination. The Navy needs to immediately relocate away that fuel from the aquifer and put it someplace else, not over an aquifer. Promote conservation in different areas, but also we're going to be communicating about how much people need to reduce their water usage, especially in those 2 water systems. And if you're looking for jobs, please, Board of Water Supply, we are desperately looking for good people to come to work for us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lau. Can we stop sharing the screen for a moment?
Sure. Okay.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you. So now we're gonna let's see. We have 162 participants. We're getting some new questions in the chat, but what we're going to do now is go to some of the original questions that were submitted in advance of this meeting from the public. And so I know some of these questions may be redundant. Isn't Kaneohe water reservoir separate from any other reservoir, Mr. Lau?
When we use the term reservoir for Board of Water Supply, we think of these water tanks that are usually made out of concrete with the roof on it completely sealed up on the hills and provide steady pressure water for domestic peak usages and also firefighting purposes. But if they mean that reservoir is the aquifer, yes, the water sources that serve Honolulu, Kaneohe are different from the water sources being impacted on the leeward side in the Halava area by Red Hill.
Okay, thank you. The next question is, it has been said that the water is being pulled from other areas to supplement the closing of the Board of Water Supply's 3 wells that you just mentioned, I think. Where is the supplemental water coming from, and does it affect the community where the water is coming from?
It is, we're going to be looking at how much more we can pump out of our sources out in Pearl Harbor area that bring water into Honolulu, but also the wells that we have in Honolulu itself. So the communities that are served by that, you know, for the Honolulu, the sources serving urban Honolulu, the whole water system, hopefully they will not see any impacts, but if we are unable to keep up with the demand or use for water by people in that water system, then they may experience low pressure and at times maybe no water. So I guess the point I'm trying to make here is that we are in an extremely serious situation. We've lost equivalent of 13 million gallons a day of well capacity or source capacity from these 2 water systems. And to make that up is not going to be an easy thing. Because fundamentally we cannot risk repeating what is the poor Navy customers have experienced. We can't repeat that and expose our customers in the bigger water system that we serve.
So the next question, since we live in Kaneohe, and I think you already answered this, where does our water come from? Should we be concerned with the whole, you know, impact of Red Hill on the Kaneohe community?
The Kaneohe community should always use water wisely. They're not directly impacted by the contamination. That's in the area of Halava, Mauna Loa area. But bottom line, the Board of Water Supply, we're financially self-sufficient. So we depend on everybody paying their water bills, not the sewer portion that goes to another city department. And usually the water portion of the bill is a smaller portion of the bill. But if you pay a BWS water bill, the money that you pay goes toward the operation and maintenance and expansion and improvement of the water system. So this Red Hill situation, in the immediate term, we're going to be forced to implement projects that can be very costly, and that cost burden to pay for that will come on all of our water customers island wide. That cost will be spread over everybody. So that's one impact immediately.
So no immediate impact to Kaneohe water users, but potentially could be impacted financially
in the future. And then, you know, what we're going to have to do is look at our capital program, our capital improvement program. We're going to have to figure out which projects we can delay and prioritize the projects that are addressing the Red Hill fuel contamination issue higher and do those. And later on, we're going to need to revisit and see how we can fund those projects that we need to keep on investing into our water system infrastructure.
Thank you. The next question I have is, after defueling, do you feel we should insist that the Red Hill facility be shut down permanently?
My simple answer is yes.
Okay, thank you. The next question is, why can't the water the military is using to flush out the system in certain military housing be used for a better purpose than just flooding a large field somewhere? Did Board of Water Supply ever think to try to safely use it somehow somewhere else?
You know, first of all, I want to say that the Navy's water system is a separate water system from the Board of Water Supply system. And that's usually serving Navy property. So we don't have a water system on their property. How they use the water that they're using for flushing or can potentially reuse it, that's kind of their responsibility and their kuleana and not the Board of Water Supply.
Okay,
But you know, one thing is, I think the Navy should be looking very carefully at other options to expand their supply. Right now, they have 2 of their 3 sources that are contaminated or shut down and unable to supply their water system. They're depending on 1 remaining source at Waiawa and Pearl City. So they need to look at ways to reuse water on base, perhaps treating wastewater to reuse it on base, more extensive, aggressive conservation efforts. They need to live within the last water source that they have still in operation.
Thank you for the answer.
If I can just jump in real quickly on the flushing. When the Navy flushes the system, they run the water through those giant GAC GAC filters that have been in the news. But the way in which they dump out the water and then the way in which they test the water once they go through the filtration systems is all governed by a Department of Health permit that includes oversight from the EPA. So there are very specific rules on what type of water they can dump out, how it needs to be treated, and where it goes. We can try and follow up with the Department of Health and put out some more information about exactly what the specifics are to that. But in general, when the Navy is flushing, when they dispose of the water that they use for flushing, all of that water and the places they send it to are governed by permits from the Department of Health and the EPA.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Senator. You know, in this situation, it's not our kuleana from the Board of Water Supply we don't have any regulatory authority and responsibility here.
So we have one more question that comes from the, that was submitted, and then I'll go to the chat room after that, which we have a number of questions there. So this question, in the decades of the fuel's existence, has it ever contaminated the aquifer? That's the first part of the question. The second question from the same person, the question is from seepage or leakage from the tanks itself, not from spillage from bursting pipes or exterior source, which has nothing to do with the tanks itself. That's a question. Spillage and leakage are different issues. If so, why the emphasis on the tanks?
Originally, the first time when I got involved was in 2014 with a leak from a tank number 5, and the Navy estimated, I think, 27,000 gallons leak. And when they figured out they had a leak is when on the concrete in that lower tunnel, on the concrete below the tank that helps to support the tank, that wall, they saw oil start to ooze, or fuel start to ooze out of the concrete. And that's why they figured out they had a leak in that tank. And the person is absolutely right. You know, the focus has been on the tanks. And one of the reasons is under the administrative order and consent, there was this voluntary agreement that was signed between the Department of Health, the EPA, the Navy, the Defense Logistics Agency. It seemed like the focus was really on the tanks. And that was our initial concern. But the person is absolutely right. It's also the other infrastructure that connects the tanks to Pearl Harbor that's also as vulnerable. And more recently, we've seen the failure where a release occurred on May 6th because of pressure surges in that pipe and caused the pipe to break open and spill fuel in that lower tunnel. So I agree, it's the whole facility, including the facility all the way down into Pearl Harbor and it serves Hickam.
Yeah, which leads to the next question from the chat. We've not heard anything about water problems on base, but surely personnel aboard Joint Base Pearl Harbor are also suffering. Can anyone address that?
I'm sorry, I can't address that. That's a question best answered by the
Seems
Navy.
like a federal or Navy issue, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I'll go to the next one.
Well, while you're looking, I can try and answer that. I don't want to jump into questions directed at Ernie too much, but there are still over 3,000 Navy personnel who are living in hotels, and they have been since about the first week of December. And, there are lots of recordings that are still on social media and online of the town halls that the Navy put on at the base housing in December. And there are lots of stories of naval families who have been impacted. And the lawsuits and class actions around that harm are just beginning to start. So, that discussion is going to persist for sure. But the Navy personnel on the base that, were consuming the tainted water, they suffered greatly. And that story is still developing.
Thank you, Senator.
So here's a question. Here's another question. How soon will the Navy begin refueling tanks? The Navy is giving a contractor 90 days until April 30th to make an assessment. And if Department of Health approves the assessment, then the Navy makes repairs to defuel. And 30 days after the repairs are made, they have 30 days to begin refueling. By these dates, the earliest defueling could begin 1 July unless the Navy slow rolls the repairs and takes its time to do repairs, which means there could be a big delay in the defueling. Do you know what the contractor's assessment is supposed to address?
No, I don't. I'm not involved in, that's a Navy contract, and
Okay.
they haven't shared their scope of work with me. But this is not consistent with the emergency order, which requires them to submit a schedule and a plan by February 2nd or February 3rd to the Department of Health. And then once that's approved, they have to do whatever improvements they have to do be done to safely defuel the facility. And then upon completion of those improvements, then defuel the facility within 30 days. So I think the gentleman's question points out something that's I've been saying here, that we are in a marathon on this issue. This is not a sprint. This issue will not end quickly in my estimation. So we need to stay informed and concerned on this, and ask that the Department of Health and the EPA stand strong, that they be assertive, and they hold the Navy accountable and keep them on these deadlines and do not allow them to slip. So, but everybody, this is going to take time. And the gentleman correctly, I think, points out that defueling the facility won't happen overnight. It could take a while, but we cannot give up.
And so, Herb, there are really three pieces to this whole crisis. Number one is the immediate impact to human health, which for me is the Navy drinking water system, the people who have consumed petroleum and cannot live in their homes because the water is contaminated. So that plan has been agreed to, is being overseen by the Department of Health and the EPA, and that's the flushing that you've seen in the TV there. They're trying to flush water through all the pipes underground and at Joint Base Pearl Harbor, and then through the home systems, so it's safe to come back. So that's piece one. Piece two is the aquifer. And that's really where Ernie has been the most engaged and will continue to need to be the most engaged with the Navy and the Department of Health going forward. What's the extent of the contamination in the Red Hill wells that the Navy uses? And then what's the extent of the contamination down below the ground? And where's that contamination going? So, that's real important. We're having both the House and Senate are having a joint informational briefing on Monday morning at 9:30, where the Navy and the department and Ernie will be present to explain and go over the plan to address the aquifer contamination, which was just agreed to this morning. And then the third part is the tanks themselves. The emergency order asking for defueling, the permit that the Navy needs to secure from the Department of Health this year to continue operation of the facility into the future, and the determination by the legislature, the counties going forward, how to regulate those tanks into the future.
Thank you. Okay, I want to thank Mr. Ernest Lau for being here and presenting and taking questions. And it's 7:30 right now, so we have half an hour left to try to get to many dozens and dozens of questions that we have on other issues regarding the Kaneohe Windward area. So I want to thank Mr. Lau for being here and sharing. And this all is being recorded and it will be available if you want to, for any members of the public to have access to the information that he shared. You can contact any of our public officials and we can get you the recording. So thank you, Mr. Lau. And we continue to hope that you guys can be vigilant in the responsibility that you have. Thank you very much. So we're going to go to our, thank you. We're going to go to our public officials, and how we're going to do this is in the time remaining, what we're going to do is I'm going to start with the same order. Senator Keohokalole will get the first question, then we'll go to Lisa, then to Scott, and then to Councilmember Esther Kiaʻāina. Then we'll go around again because there's a lot of different issues that we're going to try and get to. And I want to try to get to as much of them as possible. So if you can try to keep answers as concise as possible, that would be terrific. So thank you very much. Let's see, the first one. Okay, this is a very local kind of an issue. This is for Senator Jarrett Keohokalole. With the ongoing paving of the Pali Highway around Castle Junction, why shouldn't the contractor or the county provide traffic control? When work is ongoing, there are terrible backups, partly because no adjustments are made to traffic lights at Castle Junction. There are always police around the work site, but traffic is held up due to the regular timing of traffic lights. Traffic becomes excessively congested due to the lack of good traffic control procedures. Yikes. Senator,
so we will reach out to the DOT about this. You know, when highway contracts are procured and negotiated with contractors, normally the traffic control is the special duty officers are budgeted as a part of those projects. Obviously, what's been going on at Pali Highway with the construction has been causing a lot of really frustrating and significant traffic. So we can follow back up with the Department of Transportation and make sure that you know, if they need to go in and have the police adjust the timing and just do flow through, a lot of times it's not necessarily the timing of the traffic lights. It's just that the construction causes those lanes to go down to single lane when the math of the traffic at any given point just overwhelms the highway. So we can take that back and try and make sure that they fix that problem, because I know it's been an issue.
thank you. Representative Kitagawa, this question is regarding affordable housing. Do you think it's possible to make the home price at $370,000 for a future 3-bedroom, 2-bath, single affordable home project by the state or city in the future?
Thanks for that question. So affordable housing is, I think, a very big issue that affects so many communities across our state. And so I'm actually a member of the Housing Committee in the House, and Chair Nadine Nakamura, who's from Kauai, and Vice Chair Troy Hashimoto from Maui have been really working hard on trying to figure out affordable housing issues across the state. And so they've really put together a plan where they've identified what the need is in various income levels. So they've started from extremely low income, which is 30% AMI or less, and then very low income, lower income, moderate, workforce, market, and luxury. And they've done research to find that there is need across the board, even in the highest level of luxury, where people are making, over, I think the number is 181% of the AMI. There's still a need. So what they're trying to do right now is look at where we are already providing resources, which really seems like right now it's sort of in the extremely low or very low income levels. And then how do we provide more support at the next levels coming up, which would be the lower income, 61% AMI, to moderate income, and then workforce housing. So they have put together a plan, which the Housing Committee will be hearing of various bills over the course of this session to try to address housing needs in all the areas. I think what's really hard is to determine a certain price point right now, because that price point is really determined by the market and real estate. And we in the legislature don't really have a say in necessarily how much each house should cost. But what we can do is provide support and maybe some subsidies, or maybe look at rental housing, or how do we figure out the AMI that of people that really don't have any resources now, but are still have a need, and how do we get them those resources? So that's what the Housing Committee is working on now. And if you are interested in any affordable housing bills or things that you want to provide testimony on, please reach out to any of our offices, and we can share, what bills might be coming up and how you can get involved in sharing your testimony.
Thank you very much, Representative Kitagawa. Representative Matayoshi, this next one has to do with illegal fireworks, and we had a number of these questions. What can we do to alleviate the problems with illegal fireworks going on every day and night throughout the year? Sounds like somebody's very frustrated with it.
Yeah, I think everyone on here is frustrated with the illegal fireworks. It's a trickier problem than normally people give it credit for. Part of the problem is that people are typically not willing to report their neighbors. So anytime someone sets off an illegal firework, someone else knows what's going on. Usually the people right next door. And I've got 2 dogs, so I'm very invested in this issue too. They're terrified every time one of those bombs goes off. But I have no idea where it's coming from. When one of those bombs kind of rattles our windows, you can't just look out the window as quick as you can. It's gone already. But whoever is living next to or around those people are the ones who knows which house in particular is violating it. Now, when the police come, they need a witness for it. Unless the police just happen to be driving by and someone sets one off and they see it, then obviously they can be the witness to that crime. But otherwise, you need a witness to the crime, and it needs to be non-anonymous. That you can't just kind of call an anonymous tip for a firework violation, because think of it the other way. What if someone called an anonymous tip out on you and you didn't do anything, but you have no way of defending yourself? You can't say no, that person doesn't even live near me. What the police need and what prosecutors need to go after them is a reliable witness that's willing to testify, and usually that's the neighbor. But you guys know, sometimes your neighbors do stupid stuff and you don't want to call the cops because, hey, after the cops leave, they're still going to be your neighbor, right? You still got to live with them. You still got to get along and interact with your community, and you want everything to be peaceful. So I hate to say it, but if more people would step up to report, we could get rid of a lot of the illegal fireworks, I think. But I also understand why people don't, because we're neighbors living in a community. There are a number of bills coming through that I'm going to ask Representative Kitagawa to talk about, because she's on the CPC committee dealing with this. But that's kind of the legal background of why it's so difficult to catch people doing illegal fireworks. It's not just the reporting. It's not just posting on Nextdoor saying, hey, someone in Keopuka is popping all these fireworks. What's going on? We need to know exactly who, and we need someone to step up to be a witness and to be able to go to court and testify at trial and say, that's the guy. I'm their neighbor. I saw them doing it. But not a lot of people are willing to do that. So that's one of the issues. But Representative Kitagawa, I know she's going to talk about a couple of bills that are meant to sort of try to get around this issue and still try to get some enforcement on this illegal fireworks problem.
Thank you, Rep. Matayoshi. So as he mentioned, I'm Vice Chair for the Consumer Protection and Commerce Committee, and all firework related bills come through our committee. So there are 2 that I'm working with Chair Johansson for the committee on. The first one is to increase penalties for illegal fireworks by making it a violation of our noise control rules. So right now, if there's an illegal firework that goes off, especially those loud bombs that people have been going off, the penalty is very minimal. However, if we tie that to the Department of Health's noise control law, the penalty, if they are caught, is higher. And it really is not going to necessarily stop people from doing it, but it may deter people or deter other people from doing it if they know that certain people are getting higher fines and penalties because of it. The second one is to sort of address the issue that Rep. Matayoshi brought up, which is the sort of burden of proof that, you know, you have to be able to actually get people caught doing illegal fireworks, right? So what it is creating sort of this quicker adjudication system, which would be sort of like a speeding ticket for people who are doing fireworks. So like, for example, right, if you're speeding, the cop doesn't necessarily need to have that much proof to give you a speeding ticket. They can just, you know, believe that you were speeding, which is the same going to be for like fireworks. They can have, you know, believe that you were doing a firework. If they get a tip, they can go and give you a ticket. Then what happens is the person either has to pay the ticket or they would have to go to court to contest it. And so what this is doing is it's kind of lowering that burden of proof so that people hopefully could do anonymous reporting. And then the police would go and give them a ticket. And then if people are getting more of those tickets, hopefully that's another deterrent. So we know that it's not going to stop the issue, but we're hoping to put in sort of multiple deterrents in place so that we can at least get it under control. So that's sort of what's going on. And as I mentioned, my office is actually emailing people who have contacted my office with this concern and letting them know when these firework bills are up for hearing, because we want your testimony. We want you to share your stories, because that's how we're going to continue to have this bill move forward. So please feel free to reach out to my office or any of the other offices if you'd like to just say you want to be notified about when these bills will be coming up for a hearing so that you can share your story and testimony.
Thank you. Okay, now we go to Councilmember Esther Kiaʻāina, and we've had a couple of questions regarding what is the status of the Windward Dog Park? You're muted.
Sorry about that. The
Okay.
status of the Windward Dog Park, which is near Bayview Golf Course, is that in my discussions with Laura Thielen, the Director of Parks and Recreation, they are going to move forward to accept the transfer of the land area there from the Department of Environmental Services to Parks and Rec. One of their challenges, as you know, is because their district is so large, from Makapu'u all the way to Mokuleia, they are short-staffed. Having said that, she is committed to working with me to work with Bayview Golf Course to do what is necessary to move it forward. There is a bathroom there, it needs to be upgraded. We need to provide additional parking. We need to strengthen the fence and do some improvements on site. With regard to Bayview Golf Course, they are open to working with the community. It will require the realignment of three golf holes. One that hits off right in front of the area, and then two that is parallel to the road. And because it will require some additional costs, so I'm going to have to figure out how I'm going to get funding for that. Because I'm securing city funding for the dog park. They have to bring the three holes up to PGA standards to maintain the golf course, and so I'm hopeful that we can see a dog park in the near future. And I'm just as frustrated as many in the community. I felt I have laid the groundwork since last year and have been waiting for the movement of the departments to take on the responsibility. So that is the status of the dog park.
Thank you very much. And now we go back to Senator Keohokalole. And this question has to do with the legislature. Will you strongly advocate for reopening the Capitol, legislative and legislators' offices, committee meetings, and floor sessions to the public by February?
So I think the Capitol should be open now. I thought we should have opened it. I did not prevail in advocating for it to be open. And the reason I think it should be open is just out of fairness because of the schools. My kids have been home all week because they're on quarantine. It's just a difficult situation and everybody's trying their best. That's not, that from the standpoint of the health and safety of the employees and the public who would be entering the building, and the need for us to continue the legislative process, that's not necessarily an answer that gets to that solution. And so I understand why we ended up in this place where the building is closed, but I do think it should be open. Because I think it's important. The other thing is, we've been meeting with the hospitals and with the health department on regarding this COVID surge. It's just a different situation than Delta, around Labor Day last year, when we were in a really, really critical and dangerous situation with the collapse of our healthcare system. It does seem like we've hopefully hit a plateau. And so once the surge starts to ebb, I am confident that the legislature will reconsider the situation. And so I think, I'm pretty confident that the Capitol will be open before the end of the session. But, as long as we're in this surge situation, we're closed, and that's going to be the way it is for the foreseeable future.
Okay, thank you, Senator. We're next going to go to Representative Kitagawa. And the question, looking for the question. Question is coming from the chat. Sorry.
Or do you want me to also give sort of the opinion about the closing of the Capitol as well?
She should.
Sure,
we don't
sure.
agree on this. And I think that that's actually a good thing, because we shouldn't agree on everything. And it's a tough one.
Yeah,
Go
so
ahead.
Senator and I don't agree on this issue. And I think we've shared this at a neighborhood board. I think it was the right decision to close the Capitol. I mean, all the way up until December, we were going to open. And then when Omicron and the surge happened, then we had to make adjustments. And for me, the safety of not only the people in the building, but the safety of the public is of utmost importance. So if you've been to the Capitol during legislative session, there are so many people that come to testify. The rooms may be filled, and we can, put out chairs and we can say, okay, so many can only come in here, but the hallways are just filled with people. The railings are filled with people, and there is really no way to say you can come in and you can't come in and we've met maximum capacity or whatever it is, because we want to invite everyone if the Capitol is open. And I think for the safety of the public who's coming, but also the safety of people in the building, it was the right decision. And, for transparency's sake, I know people are like, well, we don't know what's going on and we can't see and we can't meet with you. I would like to just say that we are still available to meet with you. I think all of us here, you can email us. We'll meet you in the community. We'll talk to you on the phone, whatever it might be. And you can also watch us live, all committee hearings, informational briefings, floor session on YouTube. The Senate and the House has a channel. Olelo streams us as well. So there is still ways to be informed and to make sure that you're a part of the process. And I'm hopeful that we are going to open this session. As soon as our numbers come down and it's safe for everyone, I'm hoping we open. And I think I just want to say, even though the schools are open and kids are going back to school, I think the difference is that, at least where my children go to school, the school has a process and an order and contact tracing, and they know where kids sit, who's there on what day. If someone is COVID positive, I get a phone call that someone in your child's class is positive, they are a close contact or not. But if we open the Capitol, there is no way to determine that. And so worst case scenario would be that we become a super spreader event where so many people get COVID, and I would hate that. So Senator and I disagree a bit on that, but the hope for both of us is that we are going to open up as soon as it's safe to do so that we can welcome everyone back in.
Yeah, I just want to weigh in briefly too. Access-wise, if this happened 30 years ago, I think it would be much more of a problem. But look at us now, and we've got 138 people right now on Zoom. We had 160 people. We're able to talk to, we're able to see each other, we're able to meet with everyone. Instead of a huge cafeteria full of people, which is, good fun because you can get your chili and rice too. We can still meet on Zoom, and we have been meeting on Zoom with all of our constituents too. Anyone who wants a meeting pretty much can get one. And I would argue that it's actually more inclusive to have the Capitol like this, although I'd love to open too, but it's actually more inclusive, especially for the neighbor island guys or the people living North Shore who can't make that long drive into the Capitol. They can still log in, they can still see exactly what's going on, they can still give live testimony on video to the various committees on whatever topics they want. And they don't, for the neighbor island guys, they don't have to fly over here just to give testimony. They can give live testimony through their phones, sitting on the beach. So it's an incredible opportunity that technology has provided, and I really do appreciate that we can still function pretty much at 100% capability even while closed. And just to give a slightly selfish perspective too, I got a 1.5-year-old at home. The reason this background is blurred is because we're expecting another kid, and this whole room is full of just baby crap. So when Omicron hit, it is so contagious. It really endangers not only, I'm not so worried about myself. What I'm worried about is tracking at home, and everyone working at the Capitol, not only legislators, but also staff. They might be going home to seniors. They might be going home to kids that can't get vaccinated yet. They might be going home like me to a pregnant wife. And to me, I just cannot risk that. So while we have thousands of cases a day, because we can still talk to everyone, because we're not losing any capability, I really believe that right now the Capitol should be closed. I'm very open to looking at revisiting the issue later on, but right now I think we really got to think about our community. And for the most part, I think everyone really understands that, and everyone wants everyone to be safe. And we understand that we live in a lot of multi-generational households too. So, I want to thank everyone for their understanding, and hopefully we'll revisit that topic soon.
Okay, thank you, guys. We're going to go to Councilmember Esther Kiaʻāina now. And so this goes to the passage of Resolution 21-276, Floor Draft 1, urging the immediate defueling. I know we said we're not going to talk about Red Hill, but this is a question that came up the city council level, and wanted to know what is the response from the congressional delegation and the Biden administration regarding the passage of this resolution at the city council.
Thank you, Herb. First, let me just say at the outset that battling the Navy on things that it doesn't want to do in Hawaii, based on my personal experience relating to Kāneohe, as well as lands they illegally took out of the Hawaiian Homeland's Trust at Lu'ulule, Oahu, is very daunting. And as a result, I believe that it's all hands on deck. That is, all of our communities, all of our neighborhood boards, all county and state officials from Hawaii must be united in having them remove it. And because I have no confidence that they're going to remove it, I believe we have to leverage our relationships with others in the Biden administration to do that. So earlier I said that Chair Waters and I sent a letter, and we are challenging the Navy's assertion that the retention of the tanks is in the national security interest, right? To the contrary, the Navy's handling of this issue and their disrespect for the people of Hawaii is endangering national security. And I just want to read a sentence from the U.S. Indo-Pacific Command Hawaii Military Land Use Master Plan that says, failing to adhere to principles to respect the land, people, and culture of Hawaii, and to build strong and resilient communities has the strong potential to create long-term and lasting damage to the DoD's relationship and trust with the state and people of Hawaii, and risk the nation's defense. We have listed about 15 leases that the military has with the state's Department of Land and Natural Resources that I believe could be in jeopardy, because this is beyond Red Hill. This is a watershed moment between DoD's presence, which is significant here, Indo-Pacific Command, not just for Hawaii, but the whole Indo-Pacific region, period, right? So what is the Hawaii delegation doing? You're gonna have to ask them. I believe that the appropriate course of action was that in the National Defense Authorization Conference report that passed in December, there should have been directive language directing the US Navy to defuel and remove. Now, since that has passed, the question is what they can do. And I know there's a lot of assessments and everything, and I'm not pleased with the governor's stance that he says, well, we need to look at the impact. I'm sorry, 100 feet above a major aquifer? What do you need to study, right? And so I believe the delegation can secure funding in the DoD appropriations bill, right? But who else can have the Navy take action? It is the president himself within his executive authority, or it is the defense secretary. So again, let me just say, all hands on deck. We need everyone collectively to send the message that we will not tolerate this. And so my concern is that with the recent statement by the governor, and if the delegation take a different approach, then we collectively are still going to have to send a message to the president. And so that's my course of action. Thank you so much for the question. I'm still not dissuaded that we cannot affect change. For the last 30 years, that's what I do. We got Keohokalole back. We had a land compensation scheme to remedy the taking by the Navy of Lulule, which they still have. And a lot of the lands, including in Kaneohe, by Haiku, is a result of the Hawaiian Homelands Recovery Act, which we passed in 1995. And let me just tell you, the Navy vehemently opposed the stopping of the bombing of Keohokalole and the return, as well as compensation for the taking of Lulule. Those are just two examples in my professional history where I know that they were doing everything to put the stop on. And that's why the focus should not be there. I applaud all of my state legislative colleagues for doing what they can, because the state has the right to regulate. And of course, the Navy has disavowed that. They won't even acknowledge that. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm past working with them. They can clean up the mess that they have created, but we need to move on. $250 million have been spent already. By the time this is said and done with the lawsuits, it's going to be over $1 billion spent. So tell me, how many studies do we need? Start preparing for the removal and use the money not only to be able to safeguard their interests, but safeguard our interests as well as U.S. national security interests here in Hawaii and the region. So that's my comment.
Thank you. Thank you. Senator Keohokalole, there's a number of things in the chat. I would like to thank Senator Keohokalole and Representative Kitagawa for all of their support for our Hawaiian language program at Puʻohala. It was announced this past week that the Kaipuni program will extend up to 12th grade within the Castle complex. Puʻohala will work with Castle in welcoming their first 9th grade in the 2021-22 school year. This is the first K-12 Kaipuni program in Castle complex. What are your thoughts, and how do our senators and representatives feel they'll be able to be a part of this historic opening of this program? And
Hey,
so
real
Senator, you
quick,
can
as
take
I
it
know-
in. Yeah, we're 2 minutes away from 8 o'clock, so this probably is going to be our last comment question, and everybody can chime in if they want to. Go ahead,
So,
Senator.
Great news. The biggest and the most challenging thing is there are short teachers. We are really, really short teachers in the DOE system. It's a big problem, especially when it comes to Hawaiian immersion. So the primary thing we need to do is help them get teachers. One of the issues that we're going to try and address this year has to do with teacher salaries, not only just the starting salaries and how they need to be higher, but the fact that as teachers get deeper into their careers, the pay scales get compressed. It's an issue that's a little bit, it's a little wonky, but it's part of the reason why we have retention problems, but we also have just massive vacancies. And so we need to find teachers that can come into the schools and teach our kids. That's going to be the big challenge at Puʻohala.
And just to chime in, I just want to also just recognize Rep. Matayoshi, who's also been working on this issue with Puʻohala as well. But also just mentioning that there are bills in the legislature right now to be able to, one, give more like differential pay to teachers who are a part of the Kaipuni schools and who do Hawaiian immersion. And one of our colleagues, Representative Pat Bronco, who is in Kailua and Kaneohe Bay, he also introduced a bill, I believe, where he would do the Grow Our Own program, which is with UH, but specifically focused on getting more Hawaiian immersion teachers into our Kaipuni schools. So there are those bills out, so you can maybe search for those on the website. And if you want to submit your testimony in support of those, that would be really helpful.
Thank you.
Yep.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, our time is up. I apologize that I couldn't get to all of the questions. Really good questions from everybody in the community. I hope that this town hall meeting was something that was informative and beneficial. I think there was a lot of good information shared tonight by all of our elected officials on the Windward side. And I, again, thank you for the opportunity to be part of it. And I just want to remind everybody what I said at the very beginning. For all of those questions that were submitted either in advance of the meeting or in the chat as we were talking, they will be responded to by our 4 elected leaders on the Windward side. And please, I know that in this COVID time, it's difficult, but please continue to communicate with each other, because I think that's the most important thing in terms of not only good government, but good community and just working collectively to make our community better. So thank you again, everybody, and have a great evening and a great weekend.
Thank you again to Ernie Lau too. 8 p.m. for a state
Yes.
worker. Above and beyond.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Aloha.